right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Everyday Arborist podcast. This is episode 8. We took a week off and we're back at it again. And this week, I am excited to have two people on that one of them I work with and one I just met, but they have worked together in the past. So starting with Michael Moynahan, I call him Mike. He works with me at the city of Franklin in Tennessee, and he's the urban forestry supervisor. And we also have Daniel Leavitt, arborist for Metro Nashville Water Department, and also has a YouTube channel called Be Your Own Arborist. What's up, guys?
What's up?
Hey, how you doing?
Well, Daniel, you want to start us off? Maybe share like a little bit about where you're from, what got you into tree work, and where you are now.
Yeah, sure. I am originally from Utah, and my route into tree work was pretty unusual. I come from a family of academics. I have two brothers that teach biology and stuff, and my dad, he's a chemical engineer, but he was always super passionate about trees. And so last time I was in his yard, I actually went with him and cataloged the trees in his yard. And I think he has close to, some of them are the same species, like different varieties of peach trees, but he has over 70 different types of trees in his little quarter-acre yard. So that was kind of in my background. But going into college, I was a graphic design major. And as I went through college, the prospect of being stuck behind a computer for my entire career just seemed darker and darker. But I also got into woodworking in college. I got a job at a store called Craft Supplies USA, the woodturner's catalog that specializes in wood turning. And so that was cool. It was a deep dive into wood turning. They hired me as a technician. I didn't know anything, so they put me through these courses in wood turning. Really good coworkers. They have wood turners from around the world come and instruct there. So I got really into wood turning while I was a graphic design major. And then I got a job as a graphic designer at a business school, and I hated it. Quit looking for another job, working with my hands. And I signed up for the landscaping crew at the college I went to, and they randomly assigned me to the tree crew. And I was like, oh, this is great. I get free material for wood turning because, if you get into woodworking, buying wood is expensive. So that was kind of my intro to tree work. I saw it as a means of getting away from graphic design for the summer and to get some free wood turning material. I just fell in love with it again. I had kind of that background of trees and biology. And so combining the physicality of it with kind of the aesthetics of it, the artistic side of, ornamental pruning, the challenge of climbing, plus all of the amazing material I was getting for free. It's like drinking from a fire hose if you're doing wood turning and an arborist. It's just a constant supply of really good stuff. Yeah. Then moved out to Indiana, worked there as a production arborist, climbing crew leader for 4 or 5 years, and then came down to Nashville in 2022, and I've been here ever since. Again, I worked as a production arborist, climbing crew leader up until January, basically, of this year. I got a job with the Nashville Metro Water Department. And so now I'm an urban forester, which is a complete change of pace, very different work environment. So it's a good transition, but it is a big transition, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna stay in shape now that I'm not climbing trees with chainsaws.
Yeah, I think we both can. I mean, all of us can attest to that same thing. We call it the Franklin 15 that you put on when you first started. So.
Oh yeah, I was panicking. I'm like, when am I gonna stop gaining weight? And luckily, I've plateaued. I'm like, all right, I need to figure something out.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's wild. What company were you with in Indiana? Was it Davey up there too?
Yeah. So Davey was my first company out of college that I worked for, and I was with them for 6 years or so. And I had a little stint where I quit Davey and was focusing on wood turning and getting Be Your Own Arborist started. And I also worked with some smaller tree companies during that time. That was really fun. Mm-hmm. But most of my experience in arboriculture was production field work with Davey.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, wood turning is super neat. I worked for a production company in Kansas City that was, not the same size as Davy, but kind of similar goals that they wanted to be kind of similar to a Davy. But when I moved here to Nashville, I don't know if you've heard of Chop Nashville. They're like a small company here. So I worked with Chop for 3 years basically. And they kind of started with a guy named Jared who also had a lot of connections with people who did like woodworking and millwork and things like wood turning. And so that's a really cool side of, it could be a part of arboriculture culture, but some people even just do it as a plain hobby, but it's super neat.
Yeah, it's actually something I'm involved with here in Nashville. Is there's a organization called Tennessee Urban Forestry Council, and they're trying to get a urban wood utilization network set up across Tennessee. And so I've gone to some of their urban wood meetups and making some like social media content featuring stories of that. But yeah, I mean, it goes hand in hand, honestly. And that's another really nice thing about Tennessee is like there is a lot of like sawmills and woodworkers around. And so that's been a great move for me coming here and like getting hooked into that community. It's been really fun. There's a lot of really good people, a lot of really talented people.
Yeah. Have you heard
I think there's always been a overload of material from production, from all those things. Nice to be able to try to find different uses for it than just taking it to a landfill and grinding it into mulch or whatever they're going to do for landscape.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever use Goodwood when you were at Davy or hear about them?
That's like when I was saying I was making social media content for the urban wood utilization with the TUFC. I did a little reel with Dave at Goodwood. He's an awesome dude.
Yeah, they're really nice. My last year there at Chop, I don't know. I just felt like a lot of guilt building up. Like, man, there's some good wood that we have here. Like, not a play on words, but like it was like there's some good logs. And so I got their number on the side, and I would be like, hey, can I figure out a way to drop this log at your place? And they had, I think they have a location now, like a little bit closer into town in Gallatin, Gallatin Pike in East Nashville. And so, but yeah, that's super cool that Urban Forestry Council is doing that too, because there's only so much Goodwood can handle. And then I think for like, at least last time I talked to them, they were hauling it up out of town, up into like Portland and milling up there and then bringing it back. And that it's just super strenuous time wise with all this stuff.
Yeah. And when I worked for Davy, I had a few connections of people who, either have farms that they would just take the raw chips or had sawmills, and I'd be like, hey, I can bring you some material, and they were always really enthusiastic, but they would hit capacity so quickly, so it's just like that would be a great goal of just like having a big enough network of people that you can just they have as many logs they can handle, I'll go to the next person. But it does take like some communication overhead. So I kind of understand with the guys that just are out there cutting the trees. They just want it to be easy, simple, roll up to the landfill, dump the logs and go on. And like, so like calling people and figuring out who to take it to. But yeah, it's like, there's alternative energy products. It's the main place we'd go dump for Davy. And you just go and there's like 200 square yards piled like 60 feet high of just like logs. That's like, man, this like mulch is fine, I guess, but this could be so much more economically substantial than just mulch.
Did you guys ever go to the one that was right on the other side of Veteran Memorial, like Parkway in downtown, like across from Nissan, when they had the location there?
Yeah, that was the old one.
Yeah, I think that was alternative energy products as well, and then they sold it or whatever.
They had that super small lot, and I remember we'd have like a F-350 with a dump trailer, and that hill would be like super slippery going up to the pile, and they'd have you dump all the log, and they just had like 3 like Komatsu excavators or whatever on top of the piles, just like sitting sideways, just throwing logs off. It's like, man, this doesn't seem like a very safe environment here.
No. Yeah, I remember one time I was actually with Mike, and we rolled up, and there was like the maple burl, which I don't know, if you're into woodworking, people go crazy for the burl wood because it's like this crazy pattern. It's like swirling patterns, but it's like at the top of their massive wood pile. And I was like trying to think, like, can I go bug somebody to get that for me? And I think I mentioned something to Mike, and Mike just kind of looked at me.
No, it's like, we gotta go, dude. We gotta go. I feel like every other week, Mike and I mention like horror stories or trauma that we have of like Trinity Lane stories of driving up there and dumping, and it's just like, oh my gosh. And especially with like, Davey might have done this too, but at least at Chop, like sometimes like different trucks, you drive them and you're like, well, I don't drive this every day. And the back door just came open when I was in 65, and somebody's like, oh yeah, you don't know that you're supposed to take that pressic and take 4 carabiners and clip the back door shut? I'm like, no, I just thought it was like a normal door that stayed shut when you drove it.
Yeah, that's like, sort of like, I just got in the habit of actual like locking every single door on the trucks, because it's just like having a door pop open or like the back gate pop open while you're on the interstate. It's so stressful.
Yeah, you could be like Alex and just lose an entire axle from a chip or two.
At least he was at the gas station, but yeah.
Those old like castle door designs where there's like a whole drawbar that comes down? Like we had a half, it was like a half log truck, half chip. So the back half was like open, and these 2 bay doors came together, but had so much log like loaded in there that the sidewalls were starting to bow out. And so then the back doors that were like a bay door were arched up. And so that drawbar was just high enough to where if you had too much log in there, if you didn't have that prusik in there, it would just be like, it just come open. And you're like, yep, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
That was like one of the things, like, honestly, with like 7 years of doing production tree work, there's like sketchy things that happen all the time, just it's tree work. But like the thing that I am the most grateful I don't have to do right now is just driving the big vehicles with the equipment, because you never know what condition it's in, even like, and it's just like this expectation of, if something happens, like if you overfill the chip truck and chips are falling out, the cops pull you over, you're getting that ticket. But then like this thing of like, hey, finish that job right now, that thing. And it's like this pressure of like, oh, if something happens, it's on you, but you better like overfill those trucks. And I do not miss that at all right now.
No.
Or the dump's 45 minutes in one direction and you only have like 2 branches left to chip. So you're like, we're going to squeeze it in there.
Yeah, all the like doing crazy things, like putting it in like some extra chips or brush in like the bucket, or like shoving it in like the
bins.
The bins, yeah. It's like I don't have to do that right now, and I love it.
Did you guys ever go to Mulchco on the west side? Oh, this over by like 51st Deli. So they were cheaper as well. So our owner was like wanting us to go over there, and then also we moved shops down to like Berry Hill, so it was a little bit easier, like less traffic drive to go out 440 to 40 West to hit Mulchco. But I remember one time I hated going to 8 Alternative Energy so much that me and my friend Drew were in the chip truck. It was a full load in our biggest chipper. And we pull up to Mulchco, and their entrance gate was closed. And it was like 2:30 on a Friday, but their exit gate was open. Mulchco was weird because nobody actually hosted there in the cabin. You just like called a number and told them to charge it. And so I was like, dude, what do we do? Because I don't want to go to AE, and like we got to get back to the job. And he's like, I think we should just do it and call them and tell them we're sorry and to charge it to the account. And so entrance gate was closed, like I said. So we called and left a voicemail like, hey, we're with so-and-so, and go ahead and charge it to the account, but we don't want to drive to Alternative Energy. And so we just dumped 35 yards of chips right in the smack dab of that parking lot. Oh, man. Well, Mike, you've been mentioned, I think, a few times on this podcast just because we talk so much at work on stories, and you've shared a little bit about bouncing around in different areas of tree work. So I'd love to hear about you, where you grew up, and share how you got into tree work as well.
Yeah, so I grew up in Northern California, 3 hours north of San Francisco, and I started doing line clearance tree work. I originally went to line school to become a lineman, and one of my buddies' dads owned a tree service, and he came in while I was working at a liquor store. I was like, "Oh, you climb, right?" And I was like, yeah, I know how to climb like telephone poles." And he's like, "No, dude, I want you to come climb some trees." And I was just kind of like looking around the liquor store, like, yeah, I should probably do something else. So I ended up working with his dad and him, and they did blind clearance, and they had a contract for the utility company up there, and they got recognized for like doing all the hazard trees and stuff in that area. So they ended up taking the contract from Davy at the time. And I was just, it was like a special projects crew that I was on, and I did that for probably 3 years. And then I switched over and did fleet management for a little while with that company. And then I was like, yeah, this isn't for me either. So I'm gonna go back to cutting trees. So then I got back on and did a little bit of utility line clearance again. But then they started like a residential commercial side of the business, and I wanted to get into like more technical rigging and stuff. So I knew that that would provide it. So I ended up being a foreman is what they called it over there. So I ended up being a foreman with like a 4-man crew. I worked there for a couple of years, ended up being the safety and training specialist before I moved out here. And then when I moved out here, I worked for Davy for a couple of years there as a crew leader, climber there. And then now I work for the city of Franklin as an urban forestry supervisor, which is, like Daniel said, a huge change in pace and culture and everything else. You kind of got to learn how to work at a different pace. Not necessarily a bad thing, but just slow down a little bit. And it gives us the opportunity to practice arboriculture more instead of just getting the job done. You know, we can, if we've got a codon or something, we can subordinate it and kind of see how the tree reacts and, get to practice stuff more. We have the opportunity to send samples to get tested and soil samples and do the things that, we actually care about instead of just going out and cutting stuff down. So, yeah, that's my career kind of in a nutshell. I had a couple gaps, in tree work. Moved to Michigan for a little while, but I was a automotive fabricator and stuff, for a couple of years. And then, we moved back to California and I got right back into tree work. So.
Which they don't tell you when you get into tree work, that you basically have to fabricate still. Yeah. It's like, that's what I wish they told me at CHOP is like, oh, well, you also need to be an expert at hydraulics and fabrication,
Yeah. And using baling wire and duct tape to fix everything.
I was like, they would never hire me as a fabricator.
Just find a stick big enough and hit it with it.
Oh man.
Yeah, I was like, where's the stick I can use as a mallet, or like the little marking flag that I can use when I lost my pin for the 5th time this week or whatever.
Yeah, for your trailer. Yeah. I'm pretty sure we have a U-bolt in water currently, so it's fine.
Which is funny because we did go to O'Reilly's like a couple months ago with the U-bolt, and we were like, can you guys show us a better option that you have for a trailer than a U-bolt? And they're like, yeah, come right over here. And it's in a plastic case and it says U-bolt for trailer pin. I was like, great. It's like, so that's what you guys would use too. It's hilarious. Man. Well, Mike and I, we do have a lot of fun in Franklin and get to collaborate on a lot of stuff and share ideas and share stories with each other a lot. But Daniel, I'm interested too to like hear a little bit more about what it's like working for the water department. I kind of dabbled a little bit with Metro Water. At first it was with the Walker Building Group. We did some like contracts. We like subbed through them, and so we worked through some like southern neighborhoods. But I mean, I felt like we bounced all around Nashville working with Walker. That was, I think, under Nashville Metro Water at the time, and then the year like my last year at CHOP, we did a project up at the water treatment plant in Hendersonville.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I'd love to just hear more about your role. Like, what are you learning, or what are you excited about your position? And yeah.
Yeah. I think, like Mike said, it's a huge change to actually be in an environment where it's like actual arboricultural practices are emphasized and valued, and like kind of you're able to experiment with, you know, trees and see how they respond long term, where like I'm checking up, or I will be checking up on the same trees year after year. So the team I'm part of, we're mostly responsible for maintaining trees in the public right of way. Um, and so there's a lot of different kind of parameters to determine if a tree's in the public right of way. The easiest one is like planter strips, between the sidewalk and the road. But then if it's like within 25 feet of the center of the road, or in front of utilities like water or power poles and things like that. And so I am currently, unless we're doing like we call it like, we'll either be doing training or team building, where me and my coworker Chaz, who work at Bartlett, will just be like, all right, we need to go prune some trees. So we'll go do a team building exercise and prune some trees. But for the most part, we're contracting all that work out, which is a huge, huge difference for me. Because with Davey, we were actually contracted by Metro Water. And so a lot of trees I have pruned. And so
Full circle,
yeah, it's kind of interesting. But so we're part of the stormwater division. So how our urban forestry program works is our whole focus or justification, financially and otherwise, is for stormwater mitigation, which is interesting. Also, like, very valid. In a place like Nashville that has extreme weather, we get more rain each year than Seattle. It just comes all at once, rather than like little sprinkles. So
I didn't know
flooding,
that. Wow.
Yeah, so like flooding is, a huge issue. What was it, 2010? They had some massive floods that, really affected a lot of people. And there's also like our team has done a lot of like canopy studies, and so like seeing how the canopy's decreasing in Nashville over time. So we're trying to mitigate that. One of the big things we're doing is the Root Nashville campaign, which is planting 500,000 trees by 2050. And so our team is really small and really new. I think it's like 4 years old or something like that. And there's 7 of us total. And 2 of us have actual like production arboricultural experience. And so for the Root Nashville campaign, we're again contracting all that work out. We work with the Cumberland River Compact, which is a nonprofit, for a lot of the tree maintenance and planting. So they will plant the trees and then they'll water it for the first 2 years they're in the ground.
Do you know Brock Rovenstein?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know of him through like a guy named Hudson that I used to work with. But like that whole circle of guys, I met Brock like briefly, but yeah, I did see that he like moved over there to Cumberland River. And that's cool.
I've only talked to Brock a couple times. The funny thing is, I hear Hudson mentioned anytime I talk about tree work in Nashville.
He's a Nashville legend, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess he was up in Ashland City, but I guess he just moved. I haven't met the dude, but everybody's like, "Oh, my buddy, you need to meet him." And I'm like, "Oh yeah," but it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
But
if you ever see a guy with a long beard that's got chainsaw pants on and he's probably up in a tree, there's a good chance it's Hudson.
Yeah. I hope I can meet him soon, because literally like so many of my friends that I meet are like, "Oh, my buddy Hudson." I'm like, "I've heard of him." I tried reaching out to him on his website and it didn't come to fruition. Nothing happened. But I'm sure I'll run into him eventually. But that is, again, something kind of cool about Nashville is like once you start getting into things, it's like whether it's tree work or woodworking or both, like there's a good community. Like people know each other, and people are pretty supportive. That's nice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like the battle of how do I say this? Like, sometimes people say Nashville's like cowboy stuff for tree work. So there's a lot of bad like cowboy stuff going on in
Oh, yeah.
Nashville with tree work. But on the good side, then you have like people like Hudson, who's like this legend cowboy that goes, that everybody tells stories of. But there's like plenty of guys like that. But yeah, there's a really cool community. And then like down here in Franklin, we have Zach Poteet, which
Mhm.
like if you ever talk to anybody down here, they're like, dude, you got to meet Zach. He's so awesome. So we get to like run into him sometimes and partner with him with the city. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
think I actually
it's cool.
talked to Zach. Mike put me in touch with him,
Oh
I
yeah,
believe.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I quit Davy and I was looking for a job, and but I did kind of want to get away from production tree work because it is fulfilling, but it takes everything out of you.
Literally
Um,
everything. Yeah.
he was looking for like this hybrid, like sales arborist, crane operator, crew leader, and he's like offering for compensation. But I'm like, that is a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mike and I have been talking about that. And like, all I could imagine is just how drained I would feel after days of like working with the crane at Chop. And I remember I always go back to this one day a couple summers ago where it was like a huge oak that had failed. And the first day we did all the brush, and the second day we did all the log. And like that afternoon, I think we had that crane for like 6 months. And so the end of the first day, I like measured out the pieces and the diameters so that we could go back the next day and know like height and weight so we could do all the math and not have to sit there and just like worry about it the whole time. And it was one of those days where it was like 103. And so we're like slinging it out, and I get like 2/3 of it done. We start getting close to the bottom of the trunk, and I looked down to like the two guys I was working with, and I like couldn't finish a sentence. I was like blurring my speech. They're like, "Yeah, dude, it's time for you to get down." Like, so I just went and sat under a water hose and was like drenched myself. But it takes everything out of you, man.
Yeah, and like in Indiana, it gets hot too. It gets in the hundreds for like a month, month and a half, maybe 2 months. Here it's like 4 months or so. It's like from June through like half of October. It's just so brutal in Nashville. So I've had a great time here, but like 3 summers I've been in Nashville, I'm just like I lose my mind. I'm just like I am not meant for this climate. Like I'm like Scandinavian blood. I need like cold, coastal, windy. Like I'm gonna move to Norway.
We've got a guy on our crew named Oliver who's from New Mexico, and I think he was born and raised there and has been always out west until what is it, Mike? Like 8 months ago, 9 months ago,
Yeah, yeah.
and so he's never experienced a summer in Nashville, and so we're always just joking, is like, man, he ain't ready, dude. This humidity's about to hit. Today's
Yeah,
my
like
last day.
at this point, it's been I guess 2018 is I moved to Indiana, but I still like it's been this long. I still haven't adjusted to humidity. I need like the Utah air, but I'm sticking around. But yeah, it's rough. Doing tree work in the southeast is like it is brutal. I
Yeah.
love the winter though. If I could just do production tree work in the winter and then like have this nice cushy office job in the summer, I'd be good with that arrangement. Because I do like getting out there and doing stuff, but
Yeah.
not in the summer.
I guess
I
like
was trying to make a point. God.
I was going to say real quick, I guess I take it for granted because I was like born and raised in Georgia and around the Tennessee area. But like, Mike, being from California, and then we have two guys also from the West on the crew. They talk about how like they appreciate the forests here and like the diversity. And like, I just never thought about that because being raised here, you're just like, oh, there's trees everywhere, dude. There's plenty of them. But, if you're from New Mexico, you're like, well, there's a cactus and a pinyon and that's about it.
Mesquite, yeah.
Joshua Penn.
Yeah. Mike, what were you saying?
Just commenting on what Daniel was saying about like just getting out. Like I find myself getting out with the crews too, just to
Yeah.
get out of that office headspace and that that grind in the office to just come out and be like, all right, this is a time for me to just step away from that and cut something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So does Franklin have its own, like the city has its own crews doing tree work?
Yeah, so we're in the public works sector in Franklin, and then we're under Parks and Recreation in the future. It's called Parks right now, but they're in transition to Parks and Recreation. But yeah, we kind of have, I just got like my sixth guy recently, so it's 7 of us total also. The Urban Forestry Department's been around since like 2008, 2009, but it was kind of just like an arborist and one other guy for a
Mhm.
long time, and then a couple guys, and then they left, and it's just kind of been like building, and now we're kind of fully staffed, so we're kind of like trying to get a master plan together and do all the things to kind of make it more of like a standard thing.
That's awesome.
So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
something, with the Metro Water Department, like me and Chaz, the other guy that has production experience, like, man, if we had our own crew, like it'd be so much easier to
yep,
try to get some of this stuff done than communicating with contractors, because there's such, like even within a company, like there's such a vast difference in how people approach tree care,
yep.
um, and getting people
Mm-hmm.
that like do proper arboricultural practices, pruning practices that don't lie and tail
Yeah,
or tops.
some
Like,
A300.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard.
Well, it's even hard, teaching guys kind of, I think I've hired a couple of guys that just don't really have a background in it. They have maybe some landscaping or something, and it's just kind of, it just takes time and effort to ingrain that stuff into them, because it's
Hmm.
easy to just pick up a chainsaw or a power pruner or whatever and just make a cut, but trying to teach them the right way and be consistent, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoy it a lot down there. I always tell Mike, I'm like, reflect on it. I just feel so blessed to be a part of something like this, because it feels like what good arboriculture always, or like what the best of it could be. You have a little bit more time than you would in a production environment, and then you have an area of Tennessee that you live in where the citizens, where they have a parks department that spends the time and the invests in equipment and things to make parks look beautiful and make them safe. So it's really cool to be a part of that. Mike, I'd love you to share, like, if you have any other interesting parts of your job that you found in the last, little bit that you've been working there that you're excited about, or things that you've been learning in there.
Yeah, I mean, just because it's, we call it in its infancy, I just like the fact that we kind of get to build training programs. We get to kind of, I'm the one that goes out and looks for work. So I kind of decide what comes, sometimes we'll get calls from other departments about, we call it a service request, but somebody will call in and say a branch is hitting the school bus or something, and we'll go take care of it. But for the most part, I'm out cruising around the parks and through the city, just kind of finding work for us and setting the standards for how we do things. And like I said, the training programs, I get to kind of create my own just based off of my past experiences and other training programs that I've been through and stuff like that. So I think that's just really a cool part of it. Tim, you already know this, but we've been kind of working on an arboretum and trying to get a certified arboretum in Franklin. I'd like eventually to be a tier 4 or level 4 through the Tennessee Urban Forestry Council, but that's going to take some time. But we already have like 50 something trees in ground that are different species. So, I think it'll be easy to get level 1 and kind of just go from there and build upon it. But it's exciting. We just get projects like that where we can, ask for the funds through the department and kind of, bring it to the table, and if they approve it or not, and kind of go from there. And that's kind of cool just to be a part of something that's just bigger than you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Daniel, I texted Mike this morning. I drove by a church. It's the first time I noticed it on Franklin Road. There was a church that was like, "Hey, come check out our arboretum, certified arboretum or whatever." And I was like, "What? At a church?" And so we hopped up there with the team this morning and like looked at their trees, and sure enough, I think the Tennessee Urban Forestry Council had like checked it out and certified it. So I don't know. That
Yeah.
was kind of cool to me to be like, it is possible.
Yeah. That's something I just barely of, like, getting started. Like the urban forestry team I'm part of is very small. but it has people that have been in the community a long time and are very well connected. So one of my coworkers, Jennifer, she's like, they just did this big ceremony for like the Nashville downtown Arboretum a couple weeks ago, and my coworkers are involved in going and like checking and making sure the trees are like accurately identified and things like that. And they're like, oh yeah, like we're gonna start this back up in like September, and you should join us and stuff. And so it's like it's just fun stuff. Like to me, I'm a big enough nerd that's like that is so fun. Like I love tree identification. And so yeah, doing this thing where people like, especially like doing the arboretum stuff is like it's so cool that like it's getting people excited about trees generally, tree diversity, and like actually interacting and knowing trees. Yeah, I agree with what Mike says. It's like just being like an urban forester or part of an urban forestry team. You're working on these like kind of big, you're doing like kind of immediate day-to-day things of like, yeah, this tree is obstructing a road or something like that, or like hitting a school bus. But then just like these long-term projects, like let's get the tree canopy in Nashville more diverse and, get people excited and like education and things like that. It's new to me. It's like drinking from a fire hose of becoming familiar with all the nonprofits, all the different like acronyms and organizations within the government, but it's really pretty cool to be around people that are excited about all that stuff.
Yeah, it is. I think Mike and I have a lot of shared excitement, and it reminds me, we were riding in his truck the other day and we drove by an oak that we planted in our downtown square, and it was weeks ago when things were just starting to leaf out, and like we both panned over to the right and saw it leaf out, and without like looking at each other, we're like, oh yeah, buddy. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, but, it still feels like a kind of a crapshoot with planting trees, and so when it actually leaves out, it's like yes, because there's with like the Root Nashville campaign, we've planted a lot of trees, and a lot of them are doing well, a lot of them kind of struggling, a lot of them that like planting trees are gonna have a high mortality rate. So when it like survives and is thriving, it's yes.
Yeah, man. I mean, just sitting here like hearing you and reflecting on what Mike and I have in Franklin, we have what we have done there, and comparison to Nashville, Franklin is a pretty small pocket. And so we have a concentrated area we get to work with. It's still a big city, but I mean, when you think of like, if you were to zoom out on like a Google Maps on your phone and see Metro Nashville, you're like, oh my word. Like, I mean, the scale of what you and like the rest of your team and the people that you work with are given to like Stewart is pretty wild. And I bet it could be equally daunting, but also like kind of an exciting privilege of like, pretty cool. We get to help this out. So,
yeah, when I was looking for another job before I got the job with Metro, there's a lot of jobs that are like, required experience with GIS, and I didn't have that. And so I get that now. It's a little bit of like baptism by fire. It's like, hey, here's the tree inventory for Nashville. Figure out how to navigate it. But it's a great experience. But that like tools like that are pretty invaluable. Where you get to have the system where you catalog the trees, identify them, and then have like capacity to filter by all these different parameters. And so that's a learning curve as well. It kind of reminds me of like trying to learn graphic design software, like trying to figure out like Adobe Illustrator or something like, why am I doing this? But, it's for the tree. Now it's for the tree. So it feels worth it.
Yeah.
Another full circle.
You're like the Lorax for software. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's crazy because like there's like, they come up with so like it's moving so fast that like there's so many cool tools, but it's still daunting to like if you wanted to, you could be learning a different software like multiple times a year and still not be keeping up with all the stuff they're making. But it's cool with their capabilities of like being able to like basically like digitally represent a tree like 3D on screen, so you can come up with very specific pruning prescriptions for the trees. It takes out the guesswork, anyway, there's like there's a lot of cool stuff being made, but you know, I want to help the trees, but also I want to I just want to get outside and interact with them. So it's like kind of a blessing and a curse of like software's great. I'm happy I'm using it. But I got to get away from it as much as I can so I stay sane.
It's hard for me to kind of like justify some of that stuff. It's like, do I need it? Do I absolutely need something to give me a 3D image of a tree? Why can't I just go out and look at the thing and decide, what I need to do? But
yeah, I'd rather go out and actually look at the tree any day. But in theory and in practice, it is cool. There's cool stuff out there.
Yeah.
Well, at least here and now in this moment, the three of us can settle 85% of the Nashville tree inventory, hackberry. So
hackberry.
let's go ahead and write that down.
So this is a little rant for me. I went on a deep dive into mycology a couple years ago, which is like mushrooms and stuff. I was trying to understand which mushrooms are bad for trees, which, I know some mushrooms are mycorrhizal is a way to recognize that stuff. So I learned a lot, but then one of my agendas became trying to learn how to spalt wood, which is fungal discoloration in wood because it creates these really cool patterns. And hackberry is like just, when you cut it and it's healthy, it's just very plain, not a lot of pattern, but it spalts amazingly well. And so I ran a bunch of experiments. Hackberry is my favorite tree right now because it is like the perfect mushroom growing medium, which makes it horrible as a tree over your house, but for me it is so fun to play with.
Oh man,
yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, that explains the whole brittle cinder fungus being its like favorite host, I guess. It's like eating it up in there.
Yeah, that was one of the last when I went back to I was at Davie. Then I left, and then I started back at Davie right when Mike left for Franklin. But a massive hackberry had fallen in the cougar enclosure in the Nashville Zoo. And so they sent me to go look at it. It was beyond my capability. I did a lot of climbing, but I never got I was never the person that they sent for super technical, super big stuff. But yeah, it was that brittle cinder fungus at the base just popped it out like a socket. It's crazy.
We had what was that, Mike? Like a 50-incher that failed at Harlansdale Farm 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah. Brittle cinder at the base. Huge.
Yeah. Half of it's still left.
Yeah.
Yep. One thing the water department does is it buys properties that are in floodplains. When houses are up for sale or condemned, they'll go buy it, tear down the house, take everything out, and then just keep that property and kind of they'll maintain it, but mow the grass, but kind of keep it in natural state just so that there's not as many houses in the floodplains. And so what I've been doing this week is going and looking at the trees that were marked as hazardous in our system in those properties and seeing if anything's changed. And there was a hackberry that wasn't marked as hazardous, but this, a 60-incher that just split cleanly down the middle. And so half of it's still standing and perfectly, the center was hollow. So it's just this half of a tube going up 50 feet and the other half of a tube just laying on the ground. And it's just these hackberries are wild. But I will say that I think they're mostly the southern hackberries down here in Nashville. When I was up in Indiana, they had the northern hackberries mostly, and they were a pretty good tree. These southern hackberries, I think they just love to fall apart.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. I would agree with you. I was in Kansas City on the Kansas side, and the hackberries there were completely different. I did not have the same notion you would call. I didn't have the same experience with them there because you just imagine it as another hardwood and the timber, and you're mostly straight. But then I wonder maybe it's just kind of the sugarberry thing, or like you said, the southern hackberry being a little bit different. But man, wow.
Yeah, between the hackberries and the ash trees right now, there's a lot of tree work in Nashville. There's a lot of removals going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike and I are always racking our brains every morning of it's the impending doom of how many ash trees in these parks are going to be our responsibility in a year or so. And we already have a ton. But then it's just There's
on
so
the
much
schedule.
more to come. Yeah.
Well, this is a plug for like urban wood utilization. It's like, right now most people are cutting down the ash trees and then just, taking them to the dump. But in 70 years, there's not going to be any like large quality ash is not going to exist. And so if people like take these ash trees to the mill and are able to hoard this wood for the next 50 years, they'll be sitting on a gold mine because that won't be a thing in the future.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be like American chestnut is now, where like people get so excited, whereas like it was just like one of the most plentiful trees back in the day, and now like people freak out if they find a board of it. So try to mill it up and save it. Anybody out there listening who has a sawmill?
Yeah, if it's any good still.
yeah, it goes fast.
Yeah.
Man. Well, man, it's been awesome hearing y'all's story, and maybe even in the future I'd have you guys on again. We could deep dive into more of this stuff. But for tonight, I'd love to wrap up. Maybe Daniel, you go first. Share your favorite tree.
My favorite tree is a Utah tree. It is the curl leaf mountain mahogany. It is just the short, just tenacious little tree that grows on the slopes of the Rocky Mountains. It's in a rose family, but it fixes nitrogen in its roots. It creates these weird seeds called hell's feathers. And yeah, its wood is extremely dense, beautiful, mahogany color, very different texture than mahogany. But yeah, mountain mahogany, curl leaf mountain mahogany is just, I love it. It's home to me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll have to look that up. Mike, what you got?
I got kind of a tie, like a coastal redwood. It's probably the number one, but then also the valley oak. Just reminds me of the valleys at home, and 80, 90-inch oak trees with just 150-foot canopies on them. So just not pretty, dude. So, but yeah, I'd say those are probably my top two, but probably the coastal redwood because it can just outlive anything that it comes in contact with. So.
Yeah, we have that illustrated ID book at the shop of mine, like the pretty thick one. Every time he talks about California oaks, I look at those leaves in there. I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, like lose my mind.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
This is random. I just like today while I was driving around looking at trees, I finished East of Eden. That's a John Steinbeck book, and it talks. He's like in the Salinas Valley in California. Talks about the oak trees all the time, and I'm like, anyway, makes me want to go to California and check out the oak trees while they're still there.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's good over there.
That's awesome.
Personal opinion.
You guys, since you work together at Davie, have any quick favorite memories that you guys have, or funny stories with each other?
Man, there's so many.
I was thinking about that. This isn't a good memory. I think a
trauma.
Mike,
trauma.
We're just on a job, and Mike was just cleaning up and stepped wrong off. We're spiking up trees, we're removing trees, we're doing all this crazy stuff, and Mike just steps wrong off of a driveway and messes up his knee, and then dealt with that for a while. And then at the time, we had a really good crew in the office. There was 3 certified arborists in the field, me, Mike, and this guy Alex. He's older than me. I don't want to call him a kid. He acted like a kid, maybe, but he was great. I like Alex. But he threw out his shoulder. This other guy, about our age too, Ronnie, he messed up his back. And then I turned into like the log carrier for the summer. And
then we all fell apart. And we started leaving.
Yeah. I was like, I can't carry every single tree out of this office.
Yeah.
I can't do this anymore.
That is when I quit the first time. It was right when that was going on. That's right.
Mike,
I feel like
do you have any ones that stick out to you?
No, man, there's just, I mean, we had some good times too. I mean, just working together with all the guys that we had at the time was just, it was a good vibe, you know? That's
Yeah,
one thing
that
I
was a good.
like about the tree culture is just like, you always have a good time. So,
Yeah, that was a good summer. It was a good group of guys.
yeah, agreed.
Man, that's awesome. Well, it's always good sharing some tree stories. I think almost every morning we end up like in tears in the office because we're laughing so hard. So,
Yeah. Yep.
man, it's a blast.
We had a coworker named Tony who he had been a truck driver his entire career, but he was like 65.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know how ethical it is, but I got in the habit of recording him on my phone. I'd love to share a recording on this podcast, but you get flagged for content immediately.
For sure.
YouTube takes it down.
Oh, man.
Oh, you know that what's the guy who's like his name's Hezbollah or something. He's in all the memes, but it's like him walking, and I love the meme. It's like me walking to HR after his. Oh, it's so good. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us this week on the podcast, and whether it's on a podcast episode or if we just meet and hang out, have a beer or food or whatever, that'd be cool to hang out with you three. So appreciate you guys listening on Spotify and YouTube. Share it with your friends. And thank you, Daniel and Mike, for joining us. And you guys have a great rest of your week. We'll see you.
Yeah.
See you guys.